Namasarvebhyaha. Welcome back to the course Fundamentals of Asiddhatva in Paninian Grammar, presented by Vyoma Samskrita Pathashala. This is the 11th session of the course. Today we will see what happens when there is Vipratishedha with a Tripadi Sutra. येनाक्षरसमाम्नायमधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः। वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयम्. So in this course we are trying to understand the basics of Asiddhatva, which is used extensively in Paninian grammar to ensure the generation of correct, valid forms, sadhu rupas, using the sutras. So we are nearing the end of the first and the most important section of Asiddhatva as given by Purvatra Siddham. We have seen that Purvatra Siddham is an Adhikara Sutra situated at the beginning of Ashtamadhyaya Dvitiya Pada. It divides the Ashtadhyayi into Sapada Saptadhyayi and Tripadi, and it operates at two levels. Sapada Saptadhyayim Prati Tripadi Asiddha and Tripadyam Api Purvam Prati Param Shastram Asiddham Syat. We also saw the various kinds of exceptions to Purvatra Siddham. The Utsargapavada Vyavastha, the two sutras, Namune and Nalopasupswara Samjna Tugvidhishu Kriti, and also Ashrayat Siddhatvam. In this session, we are going to examine what happens when there is a Vipratishedha of a Sapada Saptadhyayi Sutra with a Tripadi Sutra. So as we all know, Vipratishedha is one of the most common techniques for conflict resolution in Vyakarana. So Vipratishedhe Parankaryam is the sutra. So it says wherever there is Vipratishedha, that is a clash between two equally powerful sutras, the later sutra Paramkaryam, so the Parasutra takes precedence. So what exactly do we mean by Vipratishedha? Tulya Bala Virodhaha. Tulya Bala Virodhaha Vipratishedhaha. So what is Tulya Bala? Tulya Bala is equal force or power, and Virodha is opposition. So an opposition between two sutras which are equally strong in their own way. So what is that strength of a sutra? So we say when two sutras have independent examples of their own where the other one does not interfere. Okay, so there is case A where only sutra A can apply, case B where only sutra B can apply. Now when it comes to a case C where both A and B can potentially apply, so there we say there is Vipratishedha and choose whichever is the later sutra as per the Ashtadhyayi order. So we will see very quickly a very common example of Vipratishedha. So we have a sutra called Supicha. We have seen this earlier, 73102. Yayadau supipare adantasya angasya dirghaha syat. Say for example in Rama plus Bhyam, Rama is an adanta anga followed by a yanyadi sup pratyaya. So there is dirgha, so it becomes Rama Bhyam. There is another sutra, Bahuvachane Jhalyet, which says Adantasya Angasya Ekaraha Syat Jhaladau Bahuvachane Supi. So as you can see here, Adanta Anga is common. Sup Pratyaya, what kind of a sup? Two conditions. One is it has to be Jhaladi and the other it has to be Bahuvachana. For example, we have Rama and Su. So Su is a Supratyaya Bahuvachana, Saptami Bahuvachana, and Jhaladi starting with Sakara. So here we have Ekara, it becomes Rame Su, after which there is Shatva to give Rameshu. Now, if you see here in Rama Bhyam, only Supicha can apply. Bahuvachane Jhalyet cannot apply as this is not a Bahuvachana Pratyaya. So it is an independent example for Supicha. Bahuvachane Jhalyet, when we take say Rama plus Su, Supicha cannot apply because this Su is not a Yayadi Pratyaya. Right? So it requires Yayadav Supi, and this is not a Yai letter. Therefore, Supicha does not apply. And Rama Su is an independent example for Bahuvachane Jhalyet. So this means that these are Tulya Bala. They have an independent example where the other sutra does not interfere. Now, if we come to a situation Rama and Bhyas. So tabhyam bhis, ngebhyam bhyas. So in Chaturthi and Panchami Bahuvachana, we have the pratyaya bhyas. So this bhyas pratyaya is yanyadi. It is also jhaladi Bahuvachana. So yanyadav supipare dirghaha, jhaladav Bahuvachane supipare etvam iti ubhayoho sutrayoho prasaktihi. Both supicha, which is 102, and Bahuvachane Jhalyet 103 can potentially apply here. So now we need to take a call. Which one should we take? Should we do etva or should we do dirgha? So in that case, we say vipratishedhe param karyam. So paratvat Bahuvachane Jhalyet. Since 103, the later sutra is Bahuvachane Jhalyet, we do etva, and therefore we have Ramebhyas, then Rutva Visarga to give Ramebhyah. So this is the concept of Vipratishedhe Parankaryam. Now, if we take an example like Manas plus Rathaha, a samasa. So the Supratyaya is deleted and Manas is the Purva Pada, Rathaha is the Uttara Pada. So in this context, Sakara gets converted to Repha by Sasajusho Ruhu, Padantasya Sasya Rutvam Bhavati. Now the question is, there are two possible sutras which can operate. The first one is called Hashicha, which we have seen in an earlier video. So Hashipare Roho Utvam Bhavati. Ataha Parasya. So Hrasvakarat Parasya Roho Hashipare Utvam Bhavati. So Hrasva Akara followed by Ru. When followed by a Hash letter, this Ru gets Ukaradesha is one possibility. The other one is Rori. Rori is a sutra which says Rephe Pare Rephasya Lopaha. When followed by Repha, so then there is R plus R, the first R gets deleted. So a popular example given is Saisha Dasharathi Ramaha. So we have Dasharathir and Rama. Right. So where we do Rori to give Dasharathi Rama, then there is a Dirgha by Dhralope Purvasya Dirghonaha. So in Dasharathir Ramaha, it is an independent example for Rori. Hashicha cannot apply there because it is not Hrasva Akarat Paraha Ruhu. Okay. Then in a case like say Ramar Gachati, there Rori will not apply because there is no Repha. So they are independent sutras and there is Vipratishedha. Now the question is, what will happen? The difference between the earlier Vipratishedha and this one is, so earlier both the sutras were in the Sapada Saptadhyayi, whereas here Rori happens to be in the Tripadi. Now can we do Vipratishedha? If we do Vipratishedha, Vipratishedhe Parankaryam ityanena Rori ityasya prasaktihi syat. So if there is Vipratishedha, Rori should take precedence, but what happens is actually there is no Vipratishedha. Purvatra siddhe nasti Vipratishedha abhavad uttarasya. So in case of two sutras, one of which belongs to the Tripadi, there is no Vipratishedha. Why? Vipratishedha is only when both sutras are recognized by each other, right? So it's like two vehicles which are coming from the opposite sides of the road. There is something called a right of way, right? So if one is coming uphill and the other is coming downhill, so there is a rule which says which vehicle should give the right of way. So when both sutras recognize each other, the earlier sutra gives the right of way to the latter. But when the latter sutra, that is the Tripadi Sutra, is asiddha, it is not recognized or invisible, the earlier sutra will not give way by Vipratishedha. So that is putting it in common terms. So that is what it says. Purvatra siddhe nasti vipratishedha. There is no vipratishedha with a sutra in the Tripadi. So if there is a clash between a sutra from the Sapada Saptadhyayi and a sutra from the Tripadi, the Sapada Saptadhyayi sutra will take precedence. The Tripadi sutra is asiddha and therefore it does not take part in the vipratishedha. Therefore, there is Uttva by Hashicha. So, Mana U Rathaha, then Guna to give Mano Rathaha. So, we have to be clear in understanding the difference between Vipratishedha and Apavada. If it is an Apavada Sutra, so what is the difference between Vipratishedha and Utsargapavada? In Utsargapavada, the two sutras do not have independent domains. The domain of the Apavada is contained within the domain of the Utsarga, and since it does not have any other place to go, Apavada will assert itself and take precedence even if it comes later in the Tripadi. So, Apavada Utsarga can override Purvatra Siddham, but Vipratishedha cannot override Purvatra Siddham because Rory, or as in this case, already has an example to justify its existence. Since it is Vipratishedha, it means Tulya Bala. Both the sutras already have their own examples which can justify their existence. So there is no samarthya to overrule asiddhatva. Asiddhatva does operate in case of vipratishedha, which means that there is no vipratishedha. Finally, the Sapada Saptadhyayi Sutra will take precedence. In the same context, there is another topic which is introduced by Dikshita in the Siddhanta Kaumudi. So in context of this one, and also he explains it more in the Praudha Manorama. So there is this thing called Shastra Siddhatvam and Karya Siddhatvam. Shastrasya asiddhatvam va karyasya asiddhatvam va iti prashnaha. So it's a theoretical question. When we are saying asiddha, what is it that is asiddha? Is the sutra itself asiddha? Shastra here means the sutra. So are we saying the sutra itself is invisible or not recognized, or is the karya of the sutra asiddha? So karya means the operation. So is the sutra asiddha or is the operation asiddha is the question. Shastra siddhatvam and karya siddhatvam. So I'm not going in detail into this, but I will explain very briefly. So there is a problem with karya siddhatva. So at a basic level or a superficial level, it appears as if it's the same. When I say lopashakalyasya is asiddha, or if I say yakara lopa is not known, it seems to be the same. But the Shastrakaras have analyzed it in detail and they have propounded that if asiddhatva is at the operation level, that is karya siddhatva, there is a problem with vipratishedha, because vipratishedhe param karyam would still operate because the sutra is now known. When I say Hashicha and I say Rory, Hashicha knows Rory. It may not recognize the operation of Rory, but it does know Rory. That is the hypothetical case where we say Karya Siddhatvam can be taken. So in that case, Vipratishedhe Param Karyam would still operate because the Parasutra is known. And what happens then? Then Rory would assert itself and there would be Repha Lopa. Now, even if you say that the Lopa is Asiddha, so I say Karya Siddhatvam, which means Lopa is Asiddha, but Lopa being Asiddha does not reinstate the Repha there. The Repha has already been deleted by Rory. Now, even if I say Lopa is Asiddha to Hashicha, that Sthani or that Ashraya for Hashicha, which is the Ru, the Repha is already gone. Even when the operation is deemed Asiddha, they say that Repha cannot be reinstated there. So this is explained by a Nyaya, a Laukika Nyaya called Devadatta Hantr Hatan Nyaya. So let's assume there is a person called Devadatta. This Devadatta is killed by somebody. Devadattasya Hanta. Hanta is Yajnadatta. So Devadatta is killed by Yajnadatta. Now, if Yajnadatta himself is killed by somebody else, Devadattasya Hanta Saha Hataha. Say a Vishnumitra who kills Yajnadatta. Devadatta was first killed by Yajnadatta, and now this Yajnadatta is killed by Vishnumitra, but that does not bring back Devadatta to life. Devadattasya hantari hate, Devadattaha na jivati. Right? So if Devadatta is killed by Yajnadatta and then Yajnadatta is killed by Vishnumitra, Devadatta does not come back to life. So similarly here, once Repha is deleted by Rory, and then you are saying that deletion you are masking by saying Asiddha, it does not bring back the Repha which was already deleted, is the Nyaya which is used to say that Shastra Siddhatva has to be accepted and not Karya Siddhatva. So that is why Bhattoji Dikshita's Sutrartha is very, very clear. In Purvatra Siddham, the Sutrartha he says, Adhikaroyam tena sapara saptadhyayim prati tripadi asiddha tripadyamapi purvam prati param shastram asiddham syat. Though he does not go into the details of Shastra Siddhatvam and Karya Siddhatvam in the Siddhanta Kaumudi, by just putting that word Shastram in the Sutrartha, he is making it very clear that it is Shastra Siddhatvam which is taken as the Siddhanta. Details are given in advanced texts like Praudha Manorama. So, commonly when we are talking, usage is found both ways. Say I can say Kutvam Asiddham or Choh Kuhu iti Sutram Asiddham. So in normal parlance, when we are talking, we use both ways. Even in the texts, we do find sentences with both ways. We say Jashtvam Asiddham, Kutvam Asiddham, Shatvam Asiddham, and so on. So all those are operations. So when talking, we do use them interchangeably, but when analyzed very subtly at the level of Siddhanta, we accept Shastra Siddhatvam and not Karya Siddhatvam. Okay. So today we have seen how Vipratishedha does not operate in case of one of the sutras being Tripadi. Of course, even if both sutras are Tripadi, it will not operate because the latter sutra is Asiddha. It does not exist and therefore there is only one. And the previous sutra will operate. So there is no Vipratishedha with a Tripadi sutra is the main learning. So in the background of that, we also saw the difference between Shastra Siddhatvam and Karya Siddhatvam and how the Siddhanta is Shastra Siddhatvam. So in the next session, we will wrap up the discussion of Purvatra Siddham with a very quick summary of all that we have seen so far. येनाक्षरसमाम्नायमधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः। वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयम्।